Most of you aren't subscribed. Make sure to subscribe, as it helps out the channel. Without further ado, following a long black-haired girl, we see her wake up and prepare for school, heading out as to not be late for school. Having flashbacks of being swarmed by paparazzi, she's greeted by her butler, who drives the girl to school, but at the same time a mysterious car follows them. Stepping onto school grounds, the girl puts on a fake persona, smiling, replying and greeting every student, but notes that one student stands out from the rest. Greeting Kahano, the girl notes how she despises him, being average in terms of looks and grades, but worst shows no interest towards her. With Kahano calling the girl Nishimura, the girl states that it isn't her name, prompting Kahano to reply that he only takes note of important people, apologizing as he was up all night. Having sat next to her for 3 months, Kahano still calls the girl wrong names, but the girl reiterates that her name is Akane Nishino, but Kahano clearly doesn't care, continuing to call her by different names. Realizing that Kahano never actually looked at her the entire time whilst they were conversing, Akane is suddenly pulled away by classmates, all adoring and complimenting her looks and talent. It's revealed that Akane had a massive scandal when she was younger, leaving several mental scars, and this was what led to her putting up barriers from others, hence her fake persona. Going through the day as she usually does, Akane wraps up and decides to head home for the day, calling her chauffeur but sadly gets no response. With no other option, Akane decides to walk home, but begins to grow afraid as it's getting quite dark. Suddenly a tall man blocks her path, forcing Akane to run in an opposing direction, but several other men appear, pulling up only to kidnap her. Before Akane is knocked out, she spots Kahano patiently watching, as her lifeless body is dragged into the men's van. Waking up in a warehouse, Akane realizes that the men are enemies of her father, intending to use Akane as leverage against her rich father. Outside, Kahano begins to disguise himself, scaling the warehouse's wall, all whilst the men make advances on Akane. Breaking in through a window, Kahano interrupts the men, drawing their attention and challenging the men. Spotting one of the men pulling out a gun, Kahano easily disarms and knocks out the first man, prompting a second one to pull out a gun. Being an ex-soldier, the second man chooses to fight honorably, relinquishing his gun, choosing to fight Kahano with a knife. As the man dashes towards Kahano, Kahano makes use of crowbars, managing to defend against the man's advances. Realizing the enemy is attempting to reach for his gun, Kahano swiftly knocks the man out, freeing Akane only to disappear before police arrive. With Akane's father's influence, Akane is able to keep the incident hidden from the public, returning to school the next day as if nothing had happened. Comedically later that evening, Kahano is hit by a truck, passing away instantly. Having always chased after getting stronger, Kahano was always thought of being a side character, even purposely not standing out at school, but secretly put in huge amounts of effort into fighting and training when he was alone. Having been reincarnated and given a second chance, we see Kahano narrate how he is now surrounded by gorgeous women, all under his command. With this new life and power, Kagenos deems himself the Eminence in the shadow. Having been reborn to a new family, Kahano notes how he still remembers his past life, but since he's a toddler he's forced to act the part, crying as to not arouse suspicion from his parents. Realizing this world functions on magic, Kahano learns that he is the son of Barun Kaganu, a man who trains dark knights. During training, Kahano purposely allows his older sister to get the spotlight when compared to his average self, but at Kahano night he dons his shadow gear, heading out to seek entertainment. Encountering several bandits, Kahano demands the bandits to hand over their loot, but when the bandits decide to fire projectiles at Kahano, Kangano is forced to handle the projectiles, showing off his moldable slime blade, easily deflecting and absorbing the projectiles. Spotting someone sneaking up on him, Kahano allows the man to slash him, but unveils his protective slime gear, laughing and disposing of all the men. Digging through the bandits' loot, Kahano is delighted to find a huge sum of gold, but hears something weird, wondering if the bandits had also kept a slave. Unveiling a cage, Kahano notices a horrid creature, having been amalgamated by some curse. Trying to break the curse, Kahano performs various experiments on the creature, successfully breaking the curse, returning the creature back to a blonde girl. When the blonde girl attempts to find out the reason for her being cursed, Kahano is able to make up a story, incorporating a made-up cult of Diablo, and how the blonde girl was destined to serve Kahano. Revealing his shadow form, Kahano is able to convince the blonde girl to join his newly formed Shadow Garden organization, bestowing her the name Alpha. With 3 years passing, Kahano admits that he has managed to keep his operations a secret all this time. Whilst sparring with his older sister, Kahano thinks about various ways to disarm and defeat his big sis, showing off his impressive knowledge of martial arts, having taken inspiration from his previous life. But Kahano intentionally allows his sister to defeat him, flung into a nearby river, only to monstrously hoist himself out of the water when his sister leaves the scene. As Kahano's sister turns 15, she prepares to head to mandatory magical school, but on the day of the departure, she is nowhere to be seen. Infuriating their father, Kahano notes that his organization has grown over the years, speaking to Beta, prompting Kahano to reveal that he recruited several other girls just like Alpha. Sending the girls to track down his sister's captives, Kahano manages to accidentally point out the captive's secret base, ordering the 7 shadows to head out with him immediately. Cutting to his sister, Claire, we see Claire chained up, but still has enough energy to avoid attacks from her kidnappers. As Claire chats with her kidnappers, the kidnapper mentions how he knows of Kahano, threatening to torture Kahano in order to break Claire's cold demeanor. Hearing the kidnapper threaten to use Kahano, Claire gets pissed, breaking her chains, attempting to punish the kidnapper, but is unfortunately knocked out when the kidnapper gets serious. Suddenly the kidnappers are alerted of an attack from 7 mysterious girls, all easily able to dispatch the kidnappers who are revealed to be as strong as royal guards. When the girls reveal themselves to the leader of the kidnappers, Alpha chooses to duel the leader, easily out-trading blows, but intentionally holds back, keeping the leader alive. Desperate, the leader pops a pill, surprising Alpha by smashing a hole in the ground and escaping. Unfortunately, the leader runs into Kahano, who has been lost in the kidnapper's dungeon this entire time. Charging at Kahano, Kahano notes how slow his enemy is moving, dodging and evading the leader's strikes, all whilst giving his enemy tips on how to move and fight better. Having easily dodged all of his enemy's strikes, Kahano spots the leader unleashing his final form, but is dispatched by Kahano before any real damage could be dealt. Noting that the leader had a daughter, Kahano heads home only to greet Claire, who had been left by Kahano to force herself out of the cell. With only several hours of sleep, Claire was only able to heal some of her wounds overnight, but immediately heads out for her first day at school. That evening, Kahano has a meeting with his Shadow Garden girls wanting to celebrate their organization growing so much, but Kahano is shocked to hear the girls have decided to leave Kahano. Several years later, Kahano is seen on a train thinking about the reason for the Shadow Garden disbanding. Apparently, the girls had all decided that it was about time they all grew up, and so they decided to leave Kahano. Just like in his previous life, Kahano noted how everyone around him grew out of believing in magic and heroes, but Kahano never stopped believing, revealing that he was the one who jumped in front of a truck, and got himself reincarnated. Having turned 15 years old, Kahano has decided to enroll at the same academy as his sister, the Midgar Academy for Dark Knights. Even at school, Kahano has perfected the art of blending in, picking out friends that don't stand out, nor have any outstanding traits. One day, Kahano and his mates are forced to cram into the train set to arrive at campus. Kahano and his 2 buddies envy the more prestigious and talented nobles, as they are allowed to live on campus, whereas the rest of the students must live elsewhere and commute to campus. Since Kahano had lost a bet to his friends, Kahano is forced to suffer a rejection from the most popular girl, Princess Alexia, in school. Arriving on campus, Kahano and friends spot Princess Alexia flat out rejecting another male student, all feeling sorry for the student. With his time to shine, Kahano purposely recreates a love confession scenario from the games he's played, intending to purposely get rejected. With his friends watching on, Kahano makes his move, confessing his love to Alexia, but shockingly Alexia accepts Kageno's confession, officially deeming them a couple. Heading to lunch the next day, Kahano can't help but feel every student glaring at him, all wondering why Kahano, a below-average guy in terms of skill and looks, is dating the princess. As Alexia joins Kahano and his mates for lunch, Kahano purposely steals her food, attempting to disgust the princess, but she simply brushes it off, instead offering Kahano to join and train in the same class as her, having easily arranged it with her connections. Later that day, Kahano is introduced to his new class and the instructor, Mr. Zenon. Having paired up with Alexia, the two stretch before they drill some swordplay. Analyzing her movements, Kahano notes that Alexia's movements are very bland and textbook, brutally stating that compared to her older sister she is a nobody. Wrapping up the session, Kahano overhears Alexia turning down Mr. Zenon's marriage proposal, but still knows he must continue his life in the background. That evening Kahano speaks to Alexia directly, confirming that she is using Kahano to fill in the boyfriend role in order to get Mr. Zenon off her back. Not liking how much attention he's getting, Kahano refuses at first to play along with Alexia's scheme, but is easily bribed into the role after Alexia tosses a few gold coins in Kahano's direction, claiming Kahano as her pet. With the two spending more time together, they purposely draw more attention in order to send a message to Mr. Zenon, but Mr. Zenon simply smirks at their relationship. Privately chatting, Alexia states that Mr. Zenon's perfection is too suspicious as Alexia prefers people who have flaws, like Kahano who she can tell has many flaws. With 2 weeks passing, the two ride the train together, all whilst Alexia talks about her older sister Iris, and how compared to her, Alexia is considered ordinary. Referencing the previous Bushin Combat Festival, Iris had witnessed Alexia's pathetic defeat, but Kahano tries to cheer Alexia up, mentioning how he likes Alexia's sword style. Refusing to elaborate on his opinion, Kahano annoys Alexia who storms off, leaving Kahano all alone. The next day, his friends attempt to find out how deep Kahano and Alexia's relationship is, but Kahano states that nothing too interesting happened, continuing to head to school. Right as Kahano and his mates arrive at school, Mr. Zenon and several men surround the trio, detaining Kahano for questioning, revealing that Princess Alexia has gone missing, and Kahano is the last known person seen with her. Cutting to Alexia, we see her in a mysterious place, tied up next to a beaten-up creature. Walking in, a mad scientist is excited to obtain royal blood from the princess, but this only disturbs Alexia. Back with Kahano, we see him being tortured, but Kahano thinks about how this is nothing, forcing himself to play along and pretend to be in pain. Back with Alexia, we see huge amounts of blood being drawn from Alexia, but the princess plays it cool, trying to gain intel and figure out the situation. Every so often the mad scientist attacks the creature, making Alexia feel bad for the creature, but suddenly the mad scientist remembers that he needs to feed Alexia. Following Mr. Zenon, we see that he's handing a report on his finding to Iris regarding Princess Alexia's disappearance, prompting Iris to question whether Kahano is even capable of kidnapping the princess, but decides to keep him chained up just in case. With Mr. Zenon promising to protect Iris and not allow what happened to Alexia to happen to Iris, the two overhear Claire making her way to Iris's office, demanding that her little brother Kahano is innocent. When Claire gets too rowdy, an upperclassman is forced to hold Claire back, all whilst Claire demands that Iris let her younger brother go. The entire time, Iris thinks about how distant she has grown with Alexia, unable to figure out the exact reason why they've grown so far apart. Eventually Kahano is freed from interrogation, heading home on the train, but notes that several men are following him. Hopping off the train, Kahano is whispered some words in passing by a mysterious person but continues back to his room nonchalantly. Waiting in his room, Alpha greets her master, noting that it has been a while, happy to see Kahano again. Gifting Kahano some food, she begins to help him get undressed, whilst reporting that the Shadow Garden has grown exponentially, but still fears that they are still nowhere in power compared to the cult of Diablo. Additionally, Alpha states that she believes that the cult is most likely responsible for kidnapping the princess, but asks that Kahano not act until she and the girls are able to confirm this. Before Alpha leaves, she asks for permission to kill the men that tortured her master, but Kahano states that they were only doing their job. As Alpha leaves, she relays a message from one of the girls, stating that Delta really misses Kahano. Cutting to Alexia, we see her completely messed up, barely able to utter words. With Kahano purchasing several props for his room, Kahano styles his room, hoping to impress his Shadow Garden girls when they come to visit. Just then, one of the girls appears to report their findings, impressed by Kahano's new room decorations. Hearing that his Shadow Garden has assembled 114 members to help scout and locate the princess, Kahano informs them that he has something to take care of first. Intercepting the two men that had tortured him, the men admit that they had attempted to frame Kahano for the kidnapping, but Kahano smirks and reveals his true form, instantly killing the men as revenge. Back with Alexia, we see her chatting with the creature, whispering something, right as the mad scientist rushes in, stating that there is a massive search party nearby. Afraid that he'll be captured and killed, he unveils his new demon creation device, injecting the extracted royal blood into his creature, but Alexia tries to warn against this. Believing he had created a masterpiece, the mad scientist is instantly killed by the creature, following up by freeing and thanking Alexia, only to begin digging to the surface. As Alexia curses her luck, she picks up a weapon, trying to find an escape through the facility and to safety. Turning a corner, she is greeted by Mr. Zenon, revealed to have funded the mad scientist, hoping to have made use of Alexia's royal blood. Mr. Zenon states that he intends to use the royal blood to gain power, but when Mr. Zenon tells Alexia that he intends on harming her sister Iris as well, Alexia gets pissed. Attempting to strike down Mr. Zenon states that Alexia pales in comparison to her big sister, but when Alexia attempts to copy her sister's skill, she unfortunately is unable to pull it off, losing her weapon. Completely helpless and on her knees, Alexia wonders how she can escape, but right on cue Kahano makes his grand entrance, revealing himself as Shadow. With Kahano arriving on the scene, Kahano mentions how he knows of Zenon's secret facilities, all being discovered and destroyed as they speak. Zenon calls out Kahano's bluff, believing that Kahano is simply playing dress-up and that none of Zenon's facilities have been discovered or attacked. Declaring that he'll obtain the 12th seat of a mysterious organization, Zenon lunges at Kahano, but Kahano easily evades, taunting Zenon's slow movements. Back on the surface, hundreds of people have begun to evacuate from the city, due to the mad scientist creature running rampant. With several dark knights fighting the creature reveals its ability to heal all wounds, ultimately besting the knights. As Iris steps in, Iris takes a stance, disappearing only to sever the creature's arm, following up by kicking it into a nearby building. Immediately creating new arms, the creature is unfazed, impressing Iris as she'll have to get serious. Igniting her blade, Iris continues to slice and dice the creature but makes no progress, forcing Alpha to reveal herself, intervening as Iris is taking too long. Dodging the creature's strike, Alpha unsheaths her own blade, bringing it down on the creature and incinerating its outer shell. Underneath the shell sits a girl hidden beneath the flesh. With Alpha's duty complete, she disappears, but not before informing Iris of the Shadow Garden. With several more explosions going off across the town, Iris continues to search for Alexia. Back with Kahano, we see him trading blows with Zenon, prompting Zenon to show off some of his true potential. But Kahano easily blocks Zenon's advances, even knocking Zenon down. Taunting Zenon once again, the two continue to clash blades, all whilst Alexia realizes that Kageno's blade style is very ordinary, reminding Alexia of how her blade style is very ordinary as well. Having had enough, Zenon reveals a capsule of pills, swallowing multiple pills and unveiling his final form. Charging up a deadly strike, Zenon lunges at Kahano, who welcomes the challenge. But as Zenon's artificial power swells up, Kahano gets pissed, refusing to entertain this duel as Zenon didn't work for this power, easily knocking down Zenon with his martial arts. Unleashing his shadow power, Kahano creates a ring around Zenon and himself, all whilst he recounts his dream of acquiring the power of an atomic bomb. Proud of how far he's come, Kahano continues to charge up a blast, but just then Zenon strikes Kahano with his blade, but upon impact Zenon's blade shatters. Releasing his power, Kahano deletes everything within the ring, impressing the Shadow Garden girls who admire their master's power, but the massive blast catches the attention of Iris. After the blast has cleared up, we see Iris finally making it to Alexia, who attempts to greet Iris, but Iris pulls Alexia in for a hug, relieved that her little sister is alive. Back at school, Alexia chats with Kahano, revealing that there have been no issues since his massive spectacle in town, relieving Kahano as he attempts to leave. Before he's able to, Alexia thanks him for teaching her to accept her sword style and that she wants to continue dating Kahano, now that Zenon is no longer an issue. The scene ends with Kahano flat out rejecting Alexia's offer, but this causes Alexia to get a little violent. Elsewhere, the Shadow Garden holds a meeting, continuing to investigate the cult of Diablo, whilst complimenting their master's power. But the issue of a copycat is brought to light, as the girls are aware that someone is using the Shadow Garden's name whilst doing evil deeds. At the same time, Iris chats about the Shadow Garden and the cult of Diablo's involvement, in the previous incident, to Glenn and Marco. Iris reveals a mysterious device, trusting Glenn and Marco with the item's secrecy. Back at school, Kahano bumps into a pink-haired girl, apologizing for not seeing her, offering to help her up, even though he's clearly bleeding from rejecting Alexia. During lunch, Kahano is questioned by his friends, asking whether he and Alexia had kissed, but he once again reminds them, nothing of the sort transpired. Changing topics, Kahano's friends ask if Kahano wants to visit a new shop selling chocolate, but Kahano accepts the offer, wondering what chocolates in this world tastes like. Cutting elsewhere, we see Iris and Alexia discuss the mysterious artifact with the pink-haired girl, Sherry Barnett, and her father, believing that Sherry is capable of deciphering this item's use. Apparently the artifact had been found in the aftermath of the fight with the cult of Diablo, which frightens Sherry, not wanting to be trusted with such an important item, but with some encouraging words from her father, Sherry agrees to help. Showing off her newly formed Crimson Knights, Iris assigns them to protect Sherry, allowing the curious Alexia to take part as well. Having arrived at the chocolate store, the trio wait in the absurdly long queue, whilst gossiping about a mysterious killer on the loose. Noting all the prestigious people lined up, the three are interrupted by a store clerk, asking for one of them to take a survey. Choosing Kahano as the volunteer, the clerk takes Kahano up the building and into a throne room, where members of the Shadow Garden greet him. Realizing that Gamma owns this chocolate store, Kahano is impressed by Gamma's progression, having only told her about chocolate in his past life, yet she had been able to recreate and turn it into a business. With Gamma taking a fall, she asks Kahano to take his throne, and in exchange Kahano rewards the girls with a spectacle. Asking if Gamma is profitable, Gamma reveals that she has opened several other stores, overall profiting 1 billion zenny. Additionally, Gamma reminds Kahano of a killer impersonating the Shadow Garden, warning Kahano to be careful. Before Kahano heads out, he asks for some chocolate, but at the same time manages to steal some of Gamma's gold. Rushing back to their dorms before curfew, Kahano jokingly suggests that Alexia is the serial killer, after what she did to him when he refused her confession, but Kahano suddenly hears fighting nearby. Using the excuse of an upset stomach, Kahano manages to separate himself from the other two. Observing Alexia and Shadow Garden copycats fight, Kahano is forced to assist Alexia when she's outnumbered. Right as Alexia faints, Kahano chases after several of the enemy, but allows one of his Shadow Garden girls to catch all the copycats. Elsewhere, a mysterious knight, deemed the Gaunt Knight, reveals that he has finally located the mysterious artifact that he has been searching for. That same night, Alexia reports to Iris that she had run into Shadow Garden impersonators, but since Iris is yet to decide who are the good and bad guys, Iris declares that both the Shadow Garden and the cult of Diablo are both her enemies. The next day, Kahano and his friends all agree to confess to their crushes, making use of the chocolates Kahano was able to secure as a gift to their crushes. Sadly, both Kahano's friends are rejected, as they both are considered disgusting to their crushes. Left alone with a box of chocolates, Kahano spots Sherry studying, reasoning that it should be fine to give his box of chocolates to her. That evening, Carrie learns that the chocolates are a sign of love, getting flustered thinking of Kahano, but chooses to focus on deciphering the artifact. With her father entering, Carrie's father shows signs of growing weak from age, beginning to cough. As they share a moment, Carrie thanks her father for adopting her, reminded that her father's wife was also a researcher just like Carrie is. Following Kahano, we see him chatting with one of the Shadow Garden girls, Nu, who had blended in as a student to report her findings regarding the shadow imposters they've captured. Having been brainwashed by the cult of Diablo, Nu was unfortunately unable to extract any valuable information regarding the copycat. Whilst Nu is talking, Kahano thinks about how his mates recently had signed him up to participate in the upcoming Bushin Festival, dreading the thought of having to perform for others. With his two mates stating that Kahano can draw the attention of other girls, Kahano swiftly strikes the two in their stomachs, as revenge for betraying him. Nu continues, revealing that they suspect that it's quite normal for the cult of Diablo to kidnap and brainwash children, raising them as cult members. Additionally, Nu believes that the imposters may be luring the actual Shadow Garden in by attempting to impersonate and tarnish their names. Nu states that they've discovered that there are named children, cult members that have been able to withstand the brainwashing, one in particular named Rex. Parting ways with Nu, Kahano is deep in thought, leaving Nu to wonder what being a student may feel like. With the Bushin event starting, we see Claire easily dispatch her target, all whilst several students including Kageno's mates, gather around the betting board for the upcoming matches. Next up is student council Rose Oriana, supposedly the best swordsman in the academy, who is set to face Kahano. Knowing no one is cheering for him, Kahano reasons it would be best to end this duel quickly and not draw too much attention, signaling both Kahano and Rose to dash at one another. Right before Rose's blade strikes Kahano, he slips some fake blood into his mouth, taking Rose's strike to the chest and purposely spitting out the fake blood to make the battle seem more intense. Continuing to play into the match, Kahano refuses to give up, impressing Rose as she welcomes Kahano's determination. Continuing to strike down Kahano multiple times, Kahano allows himself to be flung and struck multiple times, each time getting back up. With Rose confused as to why Kahano is still standing, Rose decides to charge up her next strike, ready to cut Kahano down, but right before she can reach Kahano, they are interrupted by the judge, who feels sorry for Kahano, deeming the match to be over in Rose's favor. Ultimately, Kahano is able to gain the respect from Rose, but needs to be wrapped up as he needs people to believe he's injured. Heading through the school, Kahano is stopped by Sherry, who wants to have a chat. Having watched his match, Sherry gives Kahano a gift out of love, but Kahano believes it is a reward for putting on a good show in his last match. With both Kahano and Sherry agreeing to be friends, Sherry tells her father the good news, revealed to have been sitting right beside the two. Apparently, Sherry's father is a man who is both competent at martial arts and academics, and was a previous Bushin Festival champion. In other words, Kahano doesn't want to associate with such an influential man, fearing that it will make Kahano stand out too much. With Sherry and her father checking on Kahano's injuries, her father asks for Kahano to take care of Sherry, which Kahano is not fond of, deciding that it would be best to stay home for a while and lay low. That evening, Sherry thinks of Kahano whilst eating the chocolates he gave her, stopping to think about how close Claire is to Kahano. Cutting to Claire enjoying a nice cup of coffee, she is interrupted by Sherry, who had come to visit. Offering Sherry a cup of coffee, Claire watches as Sherry dumps loads of sugar into her drink, amazed at her childish palate. Assuming that Sherry wanted to talk about the artifact she had been assigned to investigate, Claire is corrected, as Sherry is here to talk about Kahano. Asking if Claire is still in a committed relationship with Kahano, Claire is forced to reveal that they had broken up, which pleases Sherry. As Sherry recounts her interaction with Kahano, Claire has no choice but to swallow her jealousy, shaking profusely, knowing that Sherry is after Kahano as well. The next day, we see Kahano chatting with his mates, waiting for the student council to announce how elections will work. At that exact moment, we see the Gaunt Knight activate a mysterious item, alerting Kahano as he senses a mysterious barrier being projected suddenly out of nowhere. Attempting to use magic, Kahano realizes that his spells aren't working, wondering why no one else had noticed the barrier. Suddenly several men burst into their class, claiming to be part of Shadow Garden and revealing that they have taken over the school. With Rose refusing to surrender to the imposters, she attempts to imbue her blade with magic, but realizes her magic is being nullified, leaving herself wide open. As the masked man slashes at Rose, Kahano rushes to intercept, pushing Rose out of the way and taking the slash and collapsing to the ground, bleeding out. When students go to check on Kahano, they confirm that Kahano has no pulse, prompting Rose to thank Kahano for his sacrifice. Forced to follow the masked men's orders, all students are forced to gather in the school's hall, all spotting the Gaunt Knight watching over them. Now that Kahano is alone, he forces his arm to artificially restart the beating in his heart, using tiny shadow threads to assist with restarting his heart. Accepting the invaders' challenge, Kahano heads out to investigate the reason for this school invasion. Following Sherry, we see her interrupted by Rex, attempting to retrieve the artifact she's currently investigating. Before Rex is able to attack her, the assigned knight Glenn arrives, protecting Sherry. Clashing blades with Rex, we see Marco take care of other masked men, making a path for Sherry to escape. Back with Kahano, we see him scanning the school and taking note of everything in his surroundings. Applauding the enemy's tactics, Kahano gets annoyed, knowing that the enemies have invaded his school without style. Slowly picking off enemies one at a time, Kahano spots the adorable Sherry running through the school, secretly clearing a path for and keeping her alive. Deeming it as time, Kahano jumps from his location, choosing to meet up with Sherry. Whilst Sherry makes her way around the school, Kahano is forced to dispatch approaching enemies, revealing himself when Sherry falls down the stairs. Scolding her oblivious personality, the two make their way to the assistant principal's office where Sherry explains that the Eye of Avarice is probably the cause of magic being blocked in the school, but Kahano notes how the enemy was able to use their magic, no problem. Sherry also mentions that the Eye of Avarice is only able to absorb certain amounts of magic, exploding and releasing absorbed magic that exceeds its capacity. Finally, Sherry states that the artifact she had been studying is able to stop such a blast, which gives the two an idea. Once Sherry has decoded the artifact, she'll head near the Eye of Avarice, via some secret tunnels in the school and disarm the eye. Back with Rex, we see him admitting to the Gaunt Knight that he lost Sherry, but the Gaunt Knight orders Rex to go hunt down Sherry, demanding Rex not to fail again. Before Rex leaves, he warns Gaunt to beware the Shadow Garden, heading out to explore the school. Out of nowhere, Rex is attacked by Kahano, projecting a barrier in hopes to slow down Kahano, but Kahano easily breaks past Rex's barrier, flinging Rex into a room filled with all the masked men Kahano had killed. Before we can see Kahano slay Rex, we cut to Sherry's office, where Nu is seen putting Glenn and Marco to rest, sympathizing with them as they gave their lives to protect Sherry. Just then Kahano appears, greeting Nu, who reports that several of the Shadow Garden girls are in position, and awaiting Kageno's orders. Retrieving tools, Kahano tells the girls to wait for Sherry to finish deciphering the artifact, and only then will they make a move. Check out one of our other videos on the screen or in the info card above. Subscribe, like and comment.